So, Underworld came out when I was 13. And if this isn't a movie made for 13-year-old boys, then I really don't know what is. But it turns out I'm in my 30s now. I am still quite a simple man and even a simpler film critic. Show me 2 hours of oh God, is that feeling when you're gonna say something absurd? Show me Kate Beckinsale in a latex leather cat suit for 2 hours, and I will tell you that that's high art. That's the highest of possible arts. But I'm articulate, and I think in really weird ways, so I can probably defend that statement, that grandiose statement. Oh my God. In defense of Underworld, or a treatise on my crush on Kate Beckinsale. I think Underworld is a good movie. I think it's a very good movie. But that's not really what this video is going to determine. We're not going to determine the quality of the film Underworld. You know, you can think it's generic or you can think it is incredibly influential and like genre defining. You can think that. I don't care. That's not what this video is for. This video is not to determine whether or not Underworld is a good movie. It's trying to determine whether or not it's important, if it's significant. And my argument is that it is. In fact, my thesis is that the Underworld series is one of the most significant franchises in popular cinema. And here's why. 2003, I was 13. This film came out late in the year of 2003. What else happened in 2003? Yes, the Iraq War happened in 2003. That's when it started. Underworld is about a war that had been going on for 1,000 years between two different kinds of covens, werewolves, vampires. It's a movie that, if it asks any sort of philosophical question openly, the one that it asks is whether or not it's possible to move on from the past. It's a tribute to the violent ways that you can. So I don't think that Underworld is deliberately making statements about war. Absolutely not, especially not about its current climate. But I do believe that it's predictive cinema on a really reflective level. I think it's really interesting for that fact. I think that predictive cinema shouldn't go without investigation. I've talked often about Scream and, I Know What You Did Last Summer and The Faculty, the Kevin Williamson super popular teen horror films leading up to Columbine in '99, and yet we are seeing a predictive sort of cinema that seems to be projecting um, and reflecting certain attitudes that were shared by young people at the time, media obsessed young people who see the world as a spectacle, and society is just an aspect of it, just a component of a larger sociopathic or psychopathic spectacle. Predictive cinema. Underworld was a surprise hit. Why was it a surprise hit, though? I mean, Kate Beckinsale's hot, but can she really be hot enough to to launch a huge franchise with like three sequel films and one prequel? Is she that fucking hot? I mean, yeah, sure, I'll give you that, but let's give the audience a little bit more substance. Let's give them a steel man them. Let's give them some ground to stand on that isn't completely leveled. You go to this film and you don't know it, but on a subconscious level, on a level that you're unaware of, you are confronting the realities of the current global conflict, the current global situation, the climate of the times. You don't know that you're doing it, but when you're watching Underworld in 2003, Right at the beginning of the Iraq War, you are figuring out ways to not only justify the spectacle to yourself that you've already accepted, but now you're learning how to justify it, justify the spectacle of carnage, the spectacle of war, by investigating the the stylings of genocide, the hyper stylization of brutality, and you're able to confront the erotic components that go with some sort of rage through Kate Beckinsale, through Scott Speedman. You're able to confront the more erotic impulses that come from a more primitive idea of war, and you're also able to investigate and interact with a more humanist side, and possibly a more nihilistic one, but only nihilistic within context because the film is a gothic film. It's a gothic dark fantasy that owes its character, its identity to the horror genre as well as the action genre. This is a film that probably wouldn't have existed without Blade or The Matrix. So you're seeing hyper stylized action scenes. You're seeing a hyper stylized version of an ancient war framed within a modern context. This is a war within the underworld that has been going on forever. We view the Middle East as a nation removed from us. I mean, obviously, clearly, because it is. But what I'm saying is, as a culture completely alien to us. Because it is so foreign. At least in 2003, we had all of these different kinds of misconceptions, like preconceived notions of the eternal characteristics of their culture that we perceive them as eternal, and then our newfound seat at an elitist sort of throne. But I think this film is also speaking on a more hyper-personal level for those who are going to go and participate in the war in Iraq. The film does frame vampires as an elite ruling class, and werewolves, through Lucian's exposition, werewolves started off as a slave class. They were the daylight watchdogs, protectors of the vampires. And at the point of the war where we enter into it, it's clearly one-sided. It's genocidal at this point. Kate Beckinsale is a death dealer, but the way that everyone makes it sound and the way that it truly is, it's about eliminating the werewolf species entirely. Eliminating that coven from memory, from existence, from the earth. So, and that's where the concept of eternity, the eternal, the eternal philosophical question comes back. Because what is the end goal? What would have been the end goal of the war in Iraq? Of what seems like an extension of the Afghanistan conflict. What seems to be the end goal? Is the end goal a complete obliteration of a culture that we don't understand? Is the end goal appeasing some sort of elite ruling class? Or maybe the end goal is too lofty a question, and when people are watching Underworld, they're engaging with werewolves because of the masculine identity that Underworld bathes its werewolves with. While it is strong, it's also incredibly renegade in its makeup, and it's also deeply, deeply sensitive. I would say hypersensitive, but also just as hyper-violent as it is hypersensitive. And I believe that that is speaking to an emerging sort of identity from those who are going to be seeing war, those who have already seen war in the Afghanistan conflict. I believe that Underworld is speaking to those people, and it's predictive cinema in the sense that they also speak of PTSD. And it even answers the question that maybe war is some sort of response to historical, cultural PTSD. This is a world that is gloomy. This is a world that is gothic. It is a world that is ours turned upside down, or perhaps cinematically right side up, and we can actually engage with certain elements here. It's a film made for 13-year-old boys or for very young men who are considering enlisting or have just returned or are currently serving within a war that they simply do not understand, but is definitely tearing them up on the inside. I think this is a perfect film for that because you're able to investigate a lot of things about yourself. And it's not a question of whether or not you can participate within it. These characters are forced into it completely. Forced or manipulated or tricked. Doesn't matter how you look at it. The war is just something that has to happen based on a betrayal, an ancient betrayal, but a betrayal that has seemingly no relevance to the major players involved. Betrayal has to do with Lucian and with Victor, not necessarily with Celine and fucking Scott Speedman's character's name. I don't remember what that was though. Oh God, I'm failing. Oh God, I'm slipping, guys. I'm slipping. I was doing so well. Celine has been lied to. Celine is this object. It's how do I put this correctly? Um, Is Celine objectified within the film? Of course. I mean, I think that almost everyone, when put on film, they are objectified. They become objects of a narrative. I don't think that objectification is necessarily as simple as a lot of modern film critics would like to view the statement. If Kate Beckinsale's character is objectified within here, it's her erotic components that are that are not just matched. They're outdone by her violent extravaganzas, her violent displays, her violent stylistic displays. She is defined, yes, in part from her beauty, from her sexiness, but what propels the character, what gives the character any sort of momentum, is violence, is a capacity for it, is her style of doling it out, of dealing out death. But I think more so her cool, her cool attitude, her cool behavior, the, the 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 cinematic capturing of her violence is just so fucking cool, and it makes violence an object within an object. So I think it actually takes violence and by varying degrees, uh, by a lot of different kinds of separations here, it takes the erotic impulse out of violence in its own way. Because, like, let's go to the beginning of this weird existentialist Russian doll that is Celine in this film. Celine, yes, the most arresting thing about her figure is her figure, right? Is her like raw erotic appeal, which is superseded by her capacity for violence and which is captured within a hyper stylized sense. And when I say hyper stylized, I mean that it is so stylized that it is cold. Just and this is reflected by Kate Beckinsale's characterization of Celine as an icy character. There is interiority within the character, yes, but that interiority is not explored until the violence that was an object of her own eroticism is objectified further to be not just an object. We're not a project, a projection of pain from the past. It's an expression of loss. Violence as an expression of loss. This film is made for young kids. Well, they're about to lose a lot of innocence. And I think this is a beautiful way of showing that those who do violence, it's more than compartmentalized within them. It becomes an object of an object of an object. They become objectified by war. They become objectified by their actions within the war. And then those actions that they have committed in the war become outward expressions of cold and detached, dehumanized, violent choreography. Uh, a lonely dance of blood and bullets. And I think that's a fascinating thing. Right at the beginning of one of the most senseless wars that we are still reeling from today. I have plenty of friends who went and participated within it, and I would say more than half of them are not the same. More than half of them uh, truly died over there. They're not the same person now. That interior part of them, just like Celine, had been objectified by the violence until their actions become so dehumanized that, yeah, it's perfectly captured choreography, but it's depressive, it's isolating. Everyone wanted a piece of this film, and it seemed like all of the creators of the film, I don't know if they could get on the same page about this. You ask one guy, and they're like, yeah, that's adapted straight from Romeo and Juliet. You ask another, and he's like, no, it's directly based on a Marvel Comics character. Like, no, the fuck, what are you talking about? It's not, though. But if you ask like Nancy Collins, she'll take you to court and say that every single thing about Underworld is ripped off wholesale from Vampire the Masquerade. She even went so far, it was like a huge fucking, I don't know, a huge ledger, like a she said that everything about Underworld was ripped off completely from Vampire the Masquerade, and even went so far as to say, the vampires in Underworld drink blood, just like my vampires. Isn't that so shameful? Like, fuck off, Nancy. Fuck off. That's fucking stupid, you child. She must have had a point, though, because, that lawsuit was settled in a confidential way. So she must have had something going for her. There's this white spot right here. Are you fucking kidding me? Well, if you didn't notice it before, dear viewer, you fucking notice it now. Jesus Christ. I think that Underworld is a pretty extraordinary film. It's not just popular because vampires, werewolves, hot girl, and catsuit. It was so popular because it was speaking directly to a huge group of young men about some very heavy issues in extremely fantastical ways, but also extremely brutal, non-committal, icy ways as well, which can feel more truthful to a young mind. It was talking to them about things that they didn't understand that they were investigating as well through the film. Because can you say that our two leads are happily ever after here? Absolutely not. It ends with a cliffhanger for a sequel, with the concept that Kate Beckinsale is about to be hunted. But even more than that, nothing about the tonality of this film would even hint at some sort of fairy tale ending, even though it is a fantasy kind of gothic picture. In fact, if we thought that they were happily ever after, that'd be the greatest tonal betrayal of the entire 2000s. But no, it doesn't betray it. It's like that their connection to each other is one of the most authentic things in a world that is so hyper stylized that it seems to have lost all semblance of humanity, which definitely can happen to components and archetypes of war, of real war. What else is there? That Kate Beckinsale is a concept in this film. It's about this repressed and manipulated capacity for rage that stems from a misunderstood trauma. And Scott Speedman's character is this masculine idea of through something torturous, through something that could be viewed as an abomination, um, an event that goes against the laws of nature, a truth is uncovered. But once that truth is uncovered and that interiority is proved to be of a sensitive kind and type, you can't go back, but you've transcended a false dichotomy. You've transcended a false binary. But where do you go from there? Oh, it's incredibly uncertain. But at least you now possess that erotic and violent and cold center that was the expression of your rage, of your sadness, of your cruelty. You possess that now. And since it's in your hands, it's a sensitive possession that you will protect. As it has protected you, you've become something very, very different. And who knows if that's good? All we know is that it's not bad, and that those who need to pay for what they've done are starting to. That's all we know for sure. Underworld looks really fucking cool. I think my favorite part of the film is actually in the very beginning when it comes to its hyper stylization. It's composition that I really do appreciate. There's a part of the film where Celine is it's one of the first times she interacts with Scott Speedman, and she's trying to chase him, and she runs onto an elevator, and she becomes cornered by these werewolves in this apartment building, and like there's nowhere she can go, so she takes her fucking like two handguns and just shoots the floor around her, shoots this circle into the floor in order to escape to the level beneath it. And it looks so fucking awesome. I'm like, okay, I'm here for this. I'm here for this. It is such a gloomy film. You wouldn't expect it to have been such a surprise hit. But yeah, dude, you're investigating things that you're not aware that you are. And the filmmakers definitely are not aware that an investigation of this sort of sensitivity um, uh, through pop analogs is being done. Like, there's no fucking way they knew it. But that's the way that pop art works. Pop art is, firstly, a product, but it's not defined as a product. It's defined by how people interact with it. And if they interact with it in ways that are um, psychological, that are personal, that are sensitive, and that elevates the original product into something that it never even intended to be, and it elevates Underworld into something of a remarkable kind of film, a remarkable film, really, because I think it is remarkably powerful and was remarkably powerful for a lot of different young people, and including me, and I still feel that power. I think that Kate Beckinsale does a wonderful job here. Uh, Completely cool, completely sexy, and like overwhelmingly iconic, right? She cemented herself as an icon, as a legend through this film, and she's unforgettable. She's completely unforgettable. Uh, she really did. Burn her legacy into film with lightning in this turn. No one will ever forget Kate Beckinsale, mostly because of Underworld. Best performance, obviously, is The Last Days of Disco, one of my fucking 10 favorite films of all time. So if you're watching this and you like Kate Beckinsale but you haven't seen The Last Days of Disco, please watch it. It's legitimately one of the greatest films I have ever seen. I couldn't recommend it like in a stronger way. Please watch. You right there. Watch The Last Days of Disco. It'll change your life. It changed mine. But she does a wonderful job here. The other person who does a great job is Michael Sheen playing Lucian. Michael Sheen and Kate Beckinsale were romantic partners for quite a few years leading up to this film, to this adversarial cinematic meeting that they had in Underworld. Michael Sheen is delightful. I love Michael Sheen. It's wonderful because I saw him in the Twilight series recently, where he was like king of the fucking vampires, you know? And he was doing his best, Anne Rice scenery chewing, and I loved him for it. And he's like the king of the fucking werewolves, right? But he brings this kind of true and genuine amount of masculine hypersensitivity to this role that has a sort of renegade, checkered, um, low life, well, misunderstood low life, right? Like down on hard times, like a returning vet who falls on hard times and like has some mental insecurities and has everything taken from him by a ruling class. I mean, sound familiar? I can name you countless amounts of these people that were these horror stories born from the war in Iraq. Predictive cinema at its finest. I think that Michael Sheen's Lucian mm, probably the best analog you can ask for this kind of character, especially the defeatist characterization, the defeatist attitude that he has. The fact that yes, he does die, but he's like, at least my will is done. Like you killed me, yeah, but at least at least I'll have my revenge. At least the elites, the king of the world, will be exposed, and at least maybe this fucking war can be transcended and exposed for being not only artificial, but completely unnecessary. Stupid. Great performance from Michael Sheen. Very impressive. All in all, I do think that Underworld is a really good movie, and it presents a lot of different things worthy of investigation in some really interesting ways. I love the hyper stylized composition of the piece. I love Kate Beckinsale walking around in a cat suit looking hot as fuck. I love the interiority of the analogs, of the aesthetics, of the atmospherics, and I love the unintended philosophy of the desperate, of the hopeless, of the hopeless and the manipulated, finally having their victory lap, or a chance for one. I believe that I articulated that a little incorrectly. The exiles that walk among you, they will be redeemed. This film takes place, to quote a song I really like, on a broken fence between past and present tense. Underworld is a powerful film. Okay, that's it. That is it, dude. Like, I think that I have. Well, yeah, I think I did a good job, but I also think I went a bit too far for a lot of people. But whatever. This was a good video. Fucking movie's good. Look, they got like the set. I don't even think I've seen the sequels, dude. But look at them. It's four more movies. Fucking double dog daring me to watch them, to interact with them, to interpret them. Well, you know what they say. When Kate Beckinsale dares you to watch her movies, you do exactly what Kate Beckinsale says.